The stagecoach lurched violently, throwing Emma Hartley against the wooden frame for what felt like the 100th time since leaving Dodge City. Her fingers, already raw from gripping the worn leather strap, ached with each jolt. Outside, the Colorado wind howled through the mountain passes, carrying sheets of snow that obscured everything beyond the frosted windows. "Silverbrook Station!" The driver's muffled shout barely penetrated the storm's fury. Emma's stomach clenched. This was it, the end of her journey, and perhaps the beginning of something far worse. She pressed her palm against the small cloth purse hidden beneath her traveling cloak, feeling the crumpled letter that had brought her here. Mr. Charles Weatherby's promise of shelter and protection in exchange for... She couldn't finish the thought without her cheeks burning despite the cold. The other passengers, a mining foreman and his wife, 2 prospectors reeking of whiskey, and a traveling preacher stirred as the coach rolled to a stop. Emma was the last to descend, her worn boots sinking into the muddy slush of Silverbrook's main street. The town was exactly as she'd imagined, a collection of hastily constructed buildings huddled against the mountainside, smoke pouring from every chimney in defiance of the late March blizzard. The Grand Hotel's painted sign swung violently in the wind, its hinges screaming like wounded animals. Groups of men clustered under wooden awnings, their eyes following her movement with undisguised interest. "Miss Hartley." She turned to find a portly man in a silk vest that strained against his considerable girth. Charles Weatherby looked nothing like the successful businessman his letters had portrayed. His eyes, small and calculating, swept over her form in a way that made her skin crawl. "Mr. Weatherby," she managed, dropping a small curtsy as her mother had taught her years ago, before the fever took both her parents and left their Kansas farm to the bank. Come, let's get you out of this weather." His hand closed around her elbow with proprietary firmness. "Though I must say, your letters failed to mention how young you are." "I'm 19, sir, as I wrote." Yes. He steered her toward the hotel, his grip tightening when she stumbled on the uneven boardwalk. "We'll discuss the particulars after you've had a chance to freshen up. I've arranged a room." The hotel lobby buzzed with activity. Men in various states of cleanliness filled every available chair, their conversations dying as Weatherby led her through. Emma kept her eyes fixed on the Persian rug, counting its faded roses to avoid meeting anyone's gaze. "Here we are." Weatherby produced a key with flourish. "Room 12. I'll send up hot water and..." His smile revealed tobacco-stained teeth. Something more suitable to wear. That traveling dress has seen better days." Emma's fingers touched the frayed hem self-consciously. The dress, her mother's, altered to fit, was indeed shabby, but it was all she had aside from 2 other garments equally worn. "That's very kind, but..." "Nonsense. Can't have you meeting my associates looking like a farmhand. I'll return in 2 hours. We'll have supper in my private dining room and discuss our arrangement." He left without waiting for a response. Emma stood in the narrow hallway, key trembling in her hand. The room, when she finally entered, was small but clean. A brass bed dominated the space, its quilted coverlet pulled tight. She sank onto its edge, suddenly exhausted. What had she done? The newspaper advertisement had seemed like salvation. "Respectable gentleman seeks young woman of good character for companionship and household management. Generous compensation. References required." She'd written immediately, desperate to escape the circuit judge who'd been pressuring her since the farm's foreclosure. His wife had made it clear that Emma's position as their housemaid came with additional duties that made her stomach turn. But now, seeing Weatherby's hungry eyes, feeling the weight of the men's stares downstairs, she wondered if she'd simply traded one trap for another. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. A young maid entered with a steaming pitcher and a package wrapped in brown paper. "From Mr. Weatherby. Miss..." The girl, barely older than Emma herself, set everything on the washstand. Her expression carried a mixture of pity and resignation that chilled Emma more than the storm outside. "Wait," Emma called as the girl turned to leave. "Can you tell me, what kind of man is Mr. Weatherby?" The maid's face went carefully blank. "He's an important man in Silverbrook. Miss owns shares in 3 mines and has interests in most businesses on Main Street." "That's not what I meant." Their eyes met for a long moment. "Finally," the maid whispered. "Keep your door locked at night, miss, and don't sign anything without reading it careful-like." She slipped out before Emma could ask more. With shaking hands, Emma unwrapped the package. The dress inside was crimson silk, cut lower than anything she'd ever worn. The bodice would display far more than modesty allowed, and the skirt, while full, was clearly designed to emphasize rather than conceal. This was what he expected. This was the arrangement. Emma's legs gave out, and she sank to the floor, the silk pooling around her like spilled blood. She'd been so naive, believing his letters about needing someone to bring respectability to his household. The references he'd requested from her deceased mother's church friends had convinced her this was legitimate employment. But respectable women didn't wear crimson silk. They didn't meet men in private dining rooms. They didn't trade their virtue for a roof over their heads. Yet what choice did she have? Her purse contained exactly $3.47. Not enough for a return ticket. Barely enough for a week's lodging if she could find someone willing to rent to an unaccompanied woman. She had no family, no friends here, no options except... No. Her mother's voice, clear as Sunday church bells, rang in her memory, "Your virtue is your treasure. Emma Jane, once given, it can never be reclaimed. Guard it well." But her mother had never been alone in a mining town with winter closing in and nowhere to go. Emma pulled herself to her feet, mechanically washing her face and hands in the now lukewarm water. She wouldn't wear the crimson dress. She'd meet Weatherby in her travel-stained clothes and explain there'd been a misunderstanding. Perhaps he truly did need household help. Perhaps the dress was merely a thoughtless gift from a man unused to proper boundaries. Perhaps she was a fool clinging to hope where none existed. 2 hours later, a sharp rap announced Weatherby's return. Emma opened the door to find him flanked by another man younger, harder looking, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Still in those rags?" Weatherby's jovial tone carried an edge. "No matter. This is my associate, Mr. Crane. He's quite eager to meet you." Crane's gaze traveled slowly from her face to her feet and back again. "Weatherby said you were fresh from the farm, but I didn't expect such innocence." "Gentlemen, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" Weatherby pushed into the room, forcing her to step back. Crane followed, closing the door with deliberate slowness. "Because I've been quite clear in our correspondence. Room, board, and generous compensation in exchange for your companionship. You agreed to the terms. I agreed to household management and..." Weatherby's laugh was harsh. "My dear girl, what did you think companionship meant? I have a cook and maids aplenty. What I need is someone to entertain my business associates, to be pleasant and accommodating." The walls seemed to close in. Emma's back hit the washstand, rattling the pitcher. I can't." "Can't?" Crane stepped closer, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Seems to me a girl who travels alone to a mining town knows exactly what she's after. Stop playing coy." Now. Weatherby held up a hand, though his smile remained predatory. "No need for unpleasantness. Miss Hartley simply needs time to adjust to her new situation. Don't you, my dear?" Emma's mind raced. The window was too small, the door blocked. Even if she screamed, who would come? Who would take her side against 2 of the town's important men? I need air," she gasped. "Please, just let me..." The door burst open with such force it slammed against the wall. A man filled the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, with long dark hair and features that spoke of mixed heritage. His eyes, black as coal in the lamplight, took in the scene with one sweeping glance. "Evening, gentlemen," he said quietly, but something in his tone made both Weatherby and Crane step back. "Hotel sent me up, said there was a problem with the stove in this room." "There's no problem here," Weatherby blustered. "This is a private matter." "Stove looks fine to me, too." The stranger stepped into the room, his presence somehow making the space feel both smaller and safer. "But I heard different downstairs. Heard a young lady might be needing assistance with her departure from Silverbrook." His eyes found Emma's, and in them she saw something she hadn't expected, not desire or calculation, but a simple question. "Do you need help?" She nodded, a tiny movement that sent tears spilling down her cheeks. "Thought so." He shrugged out of his heavy coat a thick wool blanket sewn into a crude but warm garment and held it out to her. "Gets mighty cold in these storms. You'll be wanting this. Now see here." Crane stepped forward, hand moving toward his hip. "You can't just—" The stranger's movement was so fast Emma barely saw it. One moment Crane was reaching for what might have been a weapon. The next, he was pressed against the wall. The stranger's hand locked around his wrist. "I can—" "And I am." His voice remained conversational, almost gentle. "The lady's leaving. You gentlemen are staying right here while she packs her things." "You have no idea who you're crossing." "Breed," Weatherby snarled. "I own half this town. And I don't own nothing but the clothes on my back and the horse in the stable." He released Crane, who stumbled away, rubbing his wrist. "Means I got nothing to lose. You want to think on that real careful?" Emma hadn't moved, couldn't move. The coat hung between them like a bridge between two worlds, his savage one and her desperate one. Slowly, as if approaching a spooked horse, the stranger stepped closer and draped it around her shoulders. The weight was enormous, the warmth immediate. It smelled of wood smoke and pine, leather and something indefinably wild. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "I'll wait outside." "She owes me," Weatherby spluttered. "Train fare, the room. I have her letters agreeing." The stranger reached into his vest and pulled out a small leather pouch, tossing it onto the bed. Coins spilled across the quilt, gold glinting in the lamplight. "Now she don't owe you nothing." The storm had worsened by the time they left the hotel. Emma clutched her carpetbag with one hand and held the stranger's coat closed with the other, following his broad back through the swirling snow. Behind them, she could hear Weatherby shouting from the hotel entrance, his threats lost in the wind. "Where are we going?" she called out. But the stranger either didn't hear or chose not to answer. He led her down a side street, away from the main thoroughfare, past darkened storefronts and saloons spilling yellow light and raucous laughter into the night. At the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to pine forest, he stopped at a small livery stable. A grizzled man emerged from the shadows, took one look at them, and wordlessly brought out a sturdy mountain horse already saddled. "On foot in this weather?" the stableman asked. "Can't risk both of us on smoke in these conditions," the stranger replied, checking the horse's girth. "I'll walk." Emma's protest died as he lifted her onto the saddle as easily as if she weighed nothing. The horse shifted beneath her, and she grabbed the saddle horn in panic she'd rarely ridden, and never alone. "He'll follow me," the stranger said, wrapping her cold fingers around the reins. "Just hold on." They moved into the forest, the stranger leading the horse along what might have been a trail, though Emma could see nothing but snow and darkness. The trees provided some shelter from the wind, but the cold still bit through every layer of clothing. She hunched forward, grateful for the coat's warmth even as questions churned in her mind. Who was this man? Why had he helped her? And where was he taking her? After what felt like hours, but was probably less than one, a structure materialized from the darkness, a log cabin, small but sturdy, with a lean-to attached and smoke trickling from a stone chimney. The stranger led the horse under the lean-to's shelter, then reached up to help her dismount. Emma's legs buckled the moment they touched ground. She would have fallen if he hadn't caught her, his hand steady on her waist until she found her balance. "Inside," he said, the first word he'd spoken since they'd left town. The cabin's interior was sparse but clean. A single room with a stone fireplace, a narrow bed in one corner, a table with 2 chairs, and shelves lined with supplies. Fur pelts covered the walls for insulation, and herbs hung drying from the rafters. It smelled of cedar and sage, coffee and leather. The stranger went immediately to the fireplace, stirring the banked coals and adding wood until flames leaped up, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Emma stood near the door, uncertain, still clutching her carpet bag. "Sit," he said, indicating one of the chairs. "You're about frozen through." She moved stiffly to the table, watching as he filled a kettle from a water bucket and set it on a hook over the fire. His movements were economical, practiced, those of a man used to solitude and self-sufficiency. In the firelight, she could see him more clearly. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw that spoke of his mixed heritage. His hair, black as crow feathers, was tied back with a leather cord. A thin scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, and his hands, while gentle with the fire tools, were scarred and calloused from hard work. "Why?" The word escaped before she could stop it. He glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "Why did you help me? You don't know me. You gave Weatherby gold that must have been everything you had." "Wasn't everything," he said, returning his attention to the fire. "And I know enough." "What do you mean?" He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, still facing the fire, he said, "Seen that look before? Girl at the hotel had it, Martha. Look of someone trapped with no way out. She didn't make it through her first winter." Emma's throat tightened. What happened to her? "Took ill, or that's what Weatherby said. Found her in the snow behind the hotel on Christmas morning." He straightened, turning to face her. "You got the same look. Difference is, you were still fighting." The kettle began to whistle. He poured hot water into 2 tin cups, adding dried leaves that released a minty fragrance. "Tea," he said, setting 1 cup before her. "Warms you from the inside." Emma wrapped her hands around the cup, inhaling the steam. "I don't even know your name." Sam Winters." He sat across from her, his own cup cradled in his hands. "My mother's people called me something else, but Sam works well enough in town." "Your mother's people?" "Comanche. Father was a trapper, took up with her band for a season, long enough to leave her with me." His tone held no bitterness, just fact. "She died when I was 12. Been on my own since. I'm Emma Hartley." She sipped the tea, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "From Kansas. Or I was. I don't suppose I'm from anywhere now." "You're from here tonight. That's enough." They sat in silence, the fire crackling and wind howling outside. Emma's eyes grew heavy, the warmth and safety. When had she last felt truly safe, pulling her toward sleep? "You can have the bed," Sam said, standing. "I'll sleep by the fire." "I couldn't." "You will." His tone brooked no argument. "Privy's out back if you need it. There's a bar for the door. Use it." He pulled furs from a chest, making himself a pallet near the hearth. Emma watched, bewildered by this strange turn her life had taken. This morning she'd awakened in a stagecoach, headed toward what she'd thought was employment. Now she was in a stranger's cabin, miles from town, with no idea what tomorrow would bring. "Mr. Winters, Sam, I need to know. What do you expect from me?" He looked up from arranging the furs, his dark eyes unreadable. "Expect?" "You paid Weatherby. You brought me here. I have nothing to offer in return. No way to repay." "You don't owe me nothing." The words, spoken with quiet finality, broke something inside her. The tears came then, all the fear and desperation of the past weeks pouring out in silent sobs that shook her whole body. She pressed her hands to her face, ashamed of her weakness but unable to stop. She heard movement, felt something soft drape around her shoulders. Another blanket, this one smelling of lavender and cedar. Sam's hand touched her shoulder briefly, the barest moment of contact, before he withdrew. "Rest now," he said. "World'll look different come morning." Emma nodded, unable to speak. She made her way to the bed on unsteady legs, not bothering to undress beyond removing her boots. The mattress was filled with pine needles that crackled as she lay down, and the quilts were worn but clean. She watched Sam settle onto his pallet, his back to the fire, giving her the illusion of privacy. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cabin was warm and still. For the first time since leaving Kansas, Emma felt her body truly relax. "Sam," she whispered into the darkness. Thank you. Like I said, you don't owe me nothing. Now sleep." But sleep wouldn't come immediately. Instead, Emma lay listening to the fire, the wind, and the quiet breathing of the man who'd pulled her from disaster. He'd asked nothing, expected nothing, offered safety without conditions. In her experience, such kindness didn't exist, especially from men. Yet here she was. The questions remained: what would she do tomorrow? How would she survive? Where would she go? But for tonight, those questions could wait. Tonight, she was warm and safe and not alone. She pulled the blankets higher, breathing in their clean scent, on the edge of sleep. She heard Sam shift on his pallet and murmur something in a language she didn't recognize. It sounded like a prayer, or perhaps a ward against evil. Given what she'd escaped, she'd take all the protection she could get. The last thing she saw before dreams claimed her was the glint of a rifle propped near the door and the steady rise and fall of Sam's breathing. Whatever tomorrow brought, at least she'd face it rested and whole. For now, that was enough. That and the echo of his words, "You don't owe me nothing." In a world where everything came with a price, where every kindness hid a demand, those words were worth more than all of Weatherby's gold. Emma woke to the sound of wood being split outside. For a moment, she lay still, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, the log walls, the herbs hanging from the rafters, the scent of wood smoke and pine. Then memory rushed back: Weatherby's hotel room, the terrifying confrontation, and Sam Winters leading her through the storm to safety. Pale morning light filtered through the cabin's single window, revealing dust motes dancing in the air. The fire had been built up, a coffee pot steaming on the hearth, and the fresh wood stacked neatly beside it. Sam's pallet was already folded and stored away. She rose stiffly, her body aching from the tensions of yesterday. Her traveling dress was wrinkled beyond repair, but it was all she had besides the 2 spare garments in her carpet bag. She smoothed it as best she could, pinned up her hair, and ventured outside. Sam was at the woodpile, axe rising and falling in steady rhythm. He'd removed his vest, working in shirt sleeves despite the cold. Each swing was precise, economical, splitting logs with single strikes. He paused when he saw her, lowering the axe. "Morning. Coffee's ready if you want it." "Thank you." Emma wrapped her arms around herself against the chill. The storm had passed, leaving the world crystalline white under a pale blue sky. The cabin sat in a small clearing surrounded by towering pines, their branches heavy with snow. "It's beautiful here." "Peaceful," Sam agreed, setting another log on the splitting stump. "That's why I chose it. Far enough from town to avoid trouble, close enough to trade when needed." "How long have you lived here?" "Built it 3 winters back. Had a mining claim that played out. Used what I earned to buy this land free and clear." He swung the axe again, the crack of splitting wood echoing through the clearing. "Nobody bothers me out here." Emma watched him work, noting the efficiency of his movements, the careful way he stacked the split wood. Everything about this place spoke of self-sufficiency, of a man who needed no one and asked for nothing. "I should go," she said quietly. "I have imposed enough." "Go where?" He didn't look at her, just set another log in place. "You got family waiting money for travel to plan." Each question hit like a physical blow. "No, but that's not your problem." "Didn't say it was." Split, stack, another log. "But facts are facts. You leave here with nowhere to go. You'll end up right back where you started, or worse." "Then what am I supposed to do?" The words came out sharper than intended. "I can't stay here indefinitely. People will talk." "People always talk." He finally looked at her, dark eyes steady. "Question is whether you care more about talk or survival." Emma opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. He was right, of course. Propriety seemed a luxury when the alternative was Weatherby's crimson dress or freezing in a snowbank. "I know how to work," she said instead. "I can cook, clean, mend. I could keep house for you. Earn my keep. Don't need a housekeeper." The rejection stung. "Then I'll find work in town. Weatherby owns half the businesses. The other half won't cross him. You show your face in Silverbrook, there'll be trouble." "Then what?" Desperation crept into her voice. "What am I supposed to do?" Sam embedded the axe in the stump and turned to face her fully. "First, you stop panicking. Second, you eat something. Third, we figure out what skills you have besides housework. This is mining country. There's always need for someone who can read, write, and figure numbers." "You think someone would hire me for that?" "Not in Silverbrook. But there's other camps, other towns. Question is whether you can handle the waiting." "Waiting." "Until the weather clears and travel's safe. Until Weatherby's attention turns elsewhere. Until opportunity shows itself." He gathered an armload of split wood. Could be weeks, could be months. Emma followed him back to the cabin, her mind racing. Weeks or months living here with a strange man, even one who'd shown her nothing but kindness. Her reputation would be thoroughly ruined. No decent man would ever court her. No respectable family would hire her. But then, what reputation did she have left to protect? She'd already traveled alone to meet a man who'd turned out to be something far worse than she'd imagined. At least Sam had proven himself honorable. In his own way. Inside, he poured coffee into 2 tin cups, thick and black and bitter. Emma sipped carefully, grateful for its warmth. "I can teach you other things," Sam said after a moment. "How to trap small game, recognize edible plants, read weather signs, skills that don't depend on other people's goodwill." "Why would you do that?" He shrugged. "Why not? Knowledge shared is knowledge doubled. My mother's people say." "Your mother's people, the Comanche. Is that why people in town—" She trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Why they look at me like I might scalp them in their sleep." His smile held no humor. "Part of it. The other part's that I won't bow and scrape, won't pretend to be less than I am to make them comfortable." "That must be lonely. Less lonely than pretending." They finished their coffee in silence. Then Sam showed her around the property, the root cellar dug into the hillside, the smokehouse where venison hung curing, the small garden plot waiting for spring. He pointed out deer trails, showed her how to read tracks in the snow, identified which trees gave the best firewood. Emma found herself fascinated despite everything. On the farm, she'd known only cultivation, plowing, planting, harvesting. This was different. Working with the land rather than against it, taking only what was needed and leaving the rest untouched. "You really live off just this?" she asked as they checked his trap line. "Mostly. Trade furs and smoked meat for flour, salt, ammunition, sometimes take day work at the mines if pelts are scarce." He knelt beside a trap, expertly removing a rabbit and resetting the mechanism. "It's enough." That evening, as she helped prepare the rabbit for supper, he'd shown her how to skin and clean it without squeamishness. Emma felt something shift inside her. All her life, she'd been taught that a woman needed a man's protection, that independence was impossible. But here was proof otherwise. Not easy, perhaps, but possible. "I want to learn," she said suddenly. "Everything you can teach me, even if I leave come spring. I want to know I can take care of myself." Sam looked up from the stew pot. Studying her face, whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he nodded once, decisively. "We'll start tomorrow. Fair warning, I'm not an easy teacher." "I'm not afraid of hard work." Wasn't talking about the work, but there was warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. A recognition of something kindred. Two outcasts, perhaps, finding common ground in their determination to survive on their own terms. That night, as Emma lay in the bed that still felt like an imposition, she thought about the life she'd planned: marriage to a respectable man, children, a home like her parents had. That dream seemed as distant now as the Kansas farmhouse of her childhood. In its place, something else was taking root. Not a dream yet, just a possibility. Of strength she didn't know she possessed, of skills beyond women's work, of a world wider than the narrow boundaries she'd been taught to accept. From across the room came Sam's quiet breathing and the settling of logs in the fireplace. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, for the first time in months. Emma found herself looking forward to it. She pulled his blanket, still smelling faintly of sage and cedar, up to her chin. "You don't owe me nothing," he'd said. But she was beginning to understand that debts weren't always about money or obligation. Sometimes they were about choosing to stay when you could run, choosing to learn when you could despair, choosing to trust when everything in your experience said trust was dangerous. Outside, an owl called in the darkness, and its mate answered from somewhere among the pines. The sound was wild and free and utterly without apology. Emma smiled into the darkness. Perhaps she could learn to be like that too. The days fell into a rhythm that Emma found both strange and comforting. Dawn brought the sound of Sam building up the fire, the rich scent of coffee brewing. Mornings were for lessons how to handle his rifle, though her first shots went embarrassingly wide. How to set snares for rabbits, how to identify which mushrooms would feed you and which would leave you writhing in agony. "Again," Sam would say when she fumbled with the knots for the snares. "Speed won't matter if you're starving." His teaching method was patient but exacting. He'd demonstrate once, maybe twice, then watch with those dark, assessing eyes as she tried to replicate his movements. When she succeeded, he'd nod and move on. When she failed, he'd simply say, "Again," until she got it right. 2 weeks passed this way. Emma's hands grew calloused from splitting kindling. Sam wouldn't let her near the big axe yet. Her aim with the rifle improved from terrible to merely poor. She learned to move quietly through the forest, to read the sky for weather changes, to bank a fire so it would last through the night. But it was the evenings she treasured most. After supper, Sam would work on his leather goods belts, pouches, knife sheaths while she mended clothes or practiced her letters by the firelight. He'd been surprised to find she could read and write well. "My mother was a school teacher before she married," Emma explained, carefully patching a tear in one of his shirts. "She made sure I had learning, even after we moved to the farm." "Useful skill?" Sam said, tooling a pattern into a belt. "Most folks out here can barely sign their names." "Is that how you get by making these to trade?" "Part of it. Come spring, I'll take a load down to Denver. Fancy folks there pay good money for Indian crafts." "But you're only half—" Emma caught herself, flushing. "Half is enough for them. They see the cheekbones, the skin, and think savage. Might as well profit from their assumptions." His tone held that matter-of-fact quality she'd come to recognize, neither bitter nor apologetic. He simply saw the world as it was and adapted accordingly. "Doesn't it bother you being seen as something you're not?" Sam's hand stilled on the leather. "What makes you think they're wrong? My mother's blood runs as true in me as my father's. I've ridden with her people, learned their ways. Just because I choose to live apart doesn't make me less Comanche." "I didn't mean—" "I know." His hands resumed their work. "But you're thinking like them, like there's only one way or the other. World's bigger than that. Emma considered this as she finished the mending. Her own world had certainly proven bigger than expected, and smaller too. The proper life she'd imagined had shrunk to this cabin, these woods, this strange companionship with a man who fit no category she'd been taught. "I need to go to town tomorrow," Sam announced suddenly. "Running low on flour and salt." Emma's needle paused. She hadn't left the cabin since arriving, hadn't seen another soul. The thought of Sam leaving, even for a day, sent an unexpected spike of anxiety through her. "I'll come with you." "No." The word was flat. Final. "Weatherby's still looking. Had men out here last week, asking questions at the outlying camps." "You didn't tell me." "Didn't see the point in worrying you. They didn't come this far, and they won't. But town's different. You show your face there, word'll get back." "Then I'm trapped here." "Safe here," he corrected. "There's a difference." Emma set down her sewing. Frustration building. "For how long, you said yourself this could go on for months? Am I supposed to hide forever?" "Until something changes. It always does." "And if it doesn't?" Sam looked up then, meeting her eyes across the flickering firelight. "Then we figure out something else. But not yet, not till the risk's worth taking." She wanted to argue, but the memory of Weatherby's hands, Crane's leer, stopped her. Sam was right. She was safe here, and safety was no small thing. But the walls that had felt protective were beginning to feel confining. "What will you tell people if they ask about me?" "Won't tell them nothing. I don't explain myself to folks who wouldn't understand anyway." The next morning, Emma watched from the window as Sam saddled his horse. He'd left her the rifle, shown her again how to load it, made her promise to bar the door. "I'll be back before dark," he said, swinging into the saddle. "Anyone comes around?" "I hide in the root cellar and wait for them to leave." "I know." He studied her for a moment, then reached into his saddlebag and pulled something out, a small leather sheath with a bone-handled knife. "Just in case hiding isn't enough." Emma took it, the weight surprisingly heavy in her hand. "Sam?" But he was already turning the horse, heading down the trail toward town. She stood in the doorway until he disappeared among the trees, then reluctantly went inside and barred the door as promised. The cabin felt different without him, larger somehow, and too quiet. Emma tried to busy herself with chores sweeping, organizing the already neat shelves, preparing vegetables for evening stew. But her ears strained for any sound outside. Her eyes kept drifting to the window. This was what it would be like when she left. This emptiness, this alertness to danger. Only she'd be truly alone then, without even the promise of someone's return. By noon, she'd given up pretending to be productive. She sat by the window with the rifle across her lap, watching the trail. Every bird call made her tense. Every shifting shadow could be a threat. When the shadows finally moved wrong too large, too deliberate, her heart nearly stopped. Two men emerged from the trees, leading their horses. Not Sam, not even close. One was tall and lean, the other shorter but broader. Both wore the rough clothes of miners, and both had that purposeful look that meant trouble. Emma slipped to the floor, crawling to the root cellar entrance. But their voices carried through the thin walls. "Smoke from the chimney. Someone's home. Could be the breed. Could be he's got her stashed here. Only one way to find out." The door rattled as they tried it, found it barred. Emma's hands shook as she lifted the cellar door, but it creaked too loud in the stillness. "You hear that?" Footsteps circled the cabin. Emma dropped into the cellar, pulling the door down, but not before hearing, "Windows too high to see in proper. Give me a boost." She huddled in the darkness among the stored vegetables and preserved goods, the knife clutched in one hand, trying to control her breathing. Above, boots thumped on the floorboards. They'd gotten in somehow. "Ladies' things here. Sewing basket. Clothes drying by the fire. Told you he had her. Weatherby'll pay good for this information. Maybe we should wait." get the reward for bringing her back ourselves." Emma bit her knuckle to keep from whimpering. The cellar door was hidden beneath a rag rug, but if they searched thoroughly— "You want to face down that half-blood when he gets back? I seen him fight. Rather take Weatherby's finder's fee and keep my scalp." More footsteps, things being moved around. Then, finally— "Come on, we got what we came for." She waited in the darkness, counting her heartbeats, until she was sure they were gone. Even then, she stayed hidden until the light fading through the cracks told her evening was approaching. When she finally emerged, the cabin was in disarray, her sewing scattered, food stores rifled through, even Sam's leather goods disturbed. They'd been thorough in their search, these men who talked about her like she was livestock to be retrieved. Emma straightened what she could, then took up her position by the window again. The rifle felt heavier now, more real. She knew how to load it, how to aim, how to squeeze the trigger. Whether she could actually shoot a man remained to be seen. The sun was touching the treetops when Sam appeared. Emma nearly cried with relief, fumbling with the bar on the door. What happened? His eyes took in the disorder, her pale face, the knife still clutched in her hand. "Emma, what?" "Two men, miners. They broke in while I was in the cellar. They know I'm here. They're going to tell Weatherby." Sam's expression went very still, very dangerous. "Describe them." She did, as best she could remember through the fear. Sam listened, then moved through the cabin, examining the disturbance with a tracker's eye. "Henderson brothers. Work the Lucky Strike mine." He picked up one of his scattered leather pieces, smoothing it carefully. "They'll be halfway to town by now." "I'm sorry. I tried to hide like you said, but they—" "You did right." His hand touched her shoulder briefly. "You're safe. That's what matters." "But they'll tell Weatherby. He'll come here. Or send more men." "Let me worry about that. How can you be so calm I've brought trouble to your door, after everything you've done?" "Emma!" His voice cut through her rising panic. "Look at me." She did, finding his dark eyes steady on hers. "This changes things, but not everything. We knew this might happen. Now we deal with it." "How?" "First, you eat something. You're shaking like a leaf. Then we talk options." He heated the stew she'd started, added herbs she didn't recognize, made her sit and eat while he cleaned up the mess the Henderson brothers had left. By the time he joined her at the table, her nerves had settled enough to think clearly. "I should leave," she said, "tonight, before Weatherby." In the dark, on foot, with winter coming on hard. Sam shook his head. "That's fear talking, not sense." "Then what?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup like it might hold answers. "Finally, how much do you trust me?" The question caught her off guard. You've been nothing but kind." "That's not what I asked." His eyes met hers. "Do you trust me enough to stay even knowing trouble's coming?" Emma thought of the 2 weeks past, of patient lessons and quiet evenings, of the way he'd given her space to be afraid without making her feel weak, of sleeping sound knowing he was across the room, protective but not possessive. "Yes," she said simply, "I trust you." Something shifted in his expression, too quick to read. "Then we prepare, and when they come, because they will come, we'll be ready." "You'd fight for me, risk everything you've built here." "Wouldn't be much of a man if I didn't." He stood, checking the rifle, the door, the windows. "Besides, I've been ready for a fight since the day I built this place. At least now it'll be for a good reason." Emma watched him move through his preparations, efficient and calm. The fear was still there, coiled in her belly. But something else too. Not quite hope, but close to it. She'd trusted the wrong man once, but Sam Winters had proven himself in ways Weatherby never could. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. Tonight, she was still safe. The expected confrontation didn't come immediately. 3 days passed in tense watchfulness, with Sam rarely venturing far from the cabin and Emma jumping at every sound. On the fourth day, he made a decision that surprised her. "We're going to town," he announced over breakfast. Emma nearly dropped her coffee cup. "But you said—" "I said hiding was safer, but sitting here waiting for Weatherby to come to us, that's just giving him control." Sam pushed back from the table. "Better to face it on our terms." "I don't understand." "Weatherby's a businessman. He understands profit and loss. Right now, he sees you as property that's been stolen. We need to change that calculation." Emma's stomach churned. "How?" "By making it clear that pursuing you will cost him more than letting go." Sam's eyes held that dangerous stillness she'd seen the night he'd rescued her. "And by giving folks something else to talk about." An hour later, Emma found herself dressed in her best remaining dress, still travel-worn but clean riding behind Sam on his horse. He'd insisted she wear his coat again, despite her protests. "Image matters," he'd said. "You ride in looking cared for, protected. That sends a message." The town appeared around a bend, wood smoke rising from dozens of chimneys into the crisp morning air. Emma's hands tightened on Sam's waist as they entered the main street. Heads turned immediately. Conversations stopped. A woman pulling her children inside, men stepping out of shops to stare. Sam rode straight to the general store, dismounting with easy confidence before helping Emma down. His hand stayed on her elbow as they climbed the steps, a clear statement of protection. Inside, Mrs. Patterson, the shopkeeper's wife, gasped audibly. "Is that Miss Hartley?" "Morning, Mrs. Patterson," Sam said calmly. "Miss Hartley needs some supplies. Winter clothes, mainly. The storm caught her unprepared." The woman's eyes darted between them, clearly bursting with questions. Emma forced herself to meet that gaze steadily, chin raised. "Of course, Mrs. Patterson managed. I'll just fetch some things." As the woman bustled away, whispering furiously to her husband, Sam leaned close to Emma. "Remember, you're not hiding. You're not ashamed. You made a choice, and you stand by it." They spent an hour in the store, Sam insisting on purchasing not just practical clothes, but quality ones: wool skirts, sturdy boots, a proper winter coat. Emma protested the expense, but he ignored her. Mr. Winters." "Mrs." Patterson ventured as she wrapped their purchases. "People are saying, that is, Mr. Weatherby has been quite vocal about Miss Hartley breaking a contract." "No contract exists," Sam said flatly. "Miss Hartley came here seeking honest employment. When Mr. Weatherby's intentions proved less than honorable, she left. End of story." "But he says he paid." "I returned his money in full with witnesses." Sam's tone suggested the topic was closed. They left the store with their arms full of packages and the weight of dozens of eyes upon them. But it wasn't until they reached the livery stable that real trouble appeared. Weatherby stood there with 3 men, including Crane, his face flushed red when he saw Emma. "There's the little thief," he snarled. "Thought you could hide her forever. Breed." Sam handed the packages up to the stable boy, movements unhurried. "Miss Hartley's no thief. Can't steal what was never yours." "I have her letters, her agreement." "To work as a housekeeper, nothing more." Sam positioned himself slightly in front of Emma. "You tried to change the terms." She declined. "Simple business." "Business?" Weatherby stepped forward. "You savage trash! You think you can just take—" "Choose your next words real careful." Sam's voice had gone soft, which somehow made it more menacing. "I've been patient, but you insult Miss Hartley again. That changes." Crane's hand drifted toward his hip. Several townspeople who'd gathered to watch backed away quickly. "Sam," Emma said quietly, touching his arm, "it's not worth bloodshed." "Listen to her. Breed." Weatherby sneered. "Though I wonder what hold you have on her. What promises did you make? Or did you just take what you wanted like your savage kin? Sam moved so fast Emma barely saw it. One moment Weatherby was standing. The next he was on the ground, blood streaming from his nose. Crane went for his gun, but froze as Sam's knife appeared at his throat. "Drop it." The gun fell. Sam kicked it away, then surveyed the crowd that had gathered. "Let me make something clear," he said, voice carrying. "Miss Hartley is under my protection. Not because I own her, nobody owns her. Because she chose to accept my help when she needed it. Anyone who bothers her, threatens her, or speaks ill of her will answer to me." He helped Weatherby to his feet, almost gently. "You understanding me?" Weatherby spat blood, eyes full of hatred. "This isn't over." "It is if you're smart." Sam wiped his knife on his pants, sheathing it smoothly. "You push this. I'll start asking questions, like what happened to Martha, or why 3 other girls left your employ in the middle of the night over the past 2 years. Sheriff might not care, but territorial marshals tend to take interest in patterns." Weatherby's face went from red to white. Without another word, he turned and stalked away, his men trailing behind. Sam turned to the crowd. "Show's over." People dispersed slowly, whispering among themselves. But Emma caught something in their expressions that hadn't been there before: respect for Sam, perhaps even sympathy for her. They loaded their purchases and left town at a measured pace. Emma stayed silent until they were well into the trees. Then, "You investigated him before you even met me. Made some inquiries after Martha died. Didn't have enough proof to do anything about it." He glanced back at her. "Until now." "Will he really let it go?" "Maybe. Depends on whether his greed outweighs his pride." Sam guided the horse around a fallen log. "But at least now folks know you're not friendless. That counts for something." Back at the cabin, Emma tried on her new clothes while Sam tended the horse. The wool skirt was warm and well made, the boots sturdy enough for real winter. Looking at herself in Sam's small shaving mirror, she hardly recognized the desperate girl who'd stumbled off the stage 3 weeks ago. "Thank you," she said when Sam came inside. "For the clothes, for standing up to Weatherby, for everything." He paused in removing his coat. "You don't—" "I know. I don't owe you nothing." Emma smiled at the familiar words. "But gratitude isn't about owing, is it?" Something flickered in his eyes. "No, I suppose it's not." That evening felt different. The threat was still there, but they'd faced it together. Weatherby was no longer a looming monster, but a man who could bleed, who could be backed down, and the town had seen it happen. "You were different today," Emma observed as they shared supper. "In town, harder. That's who I need to be there." Sam looked up from his plate. "Does it bother you?" Emma considered. The violence had been swift, controlled, purposeful. Nothing like her father's drunken rages or the cruel casualness of men like Crane. "No," she said finally. "It was necessary. Protected without being possessive, like you said. My mother's people have a saying: the warrior who fights for others is twice blessed, once by victory, once by purpose." He smiled slightly. "Lost the blessing of my tribe long ago. Nice to have purpose again." "Why did you lose your tribe?" Sam was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, wouldn't raid with them, couldn't see the honor in attacking settlers who were just trying to survive. Same as us. But wouldn't fight against them either when the cavalry came. Man with a foot in 2 worlds stands in neither. "That must have been lonely." "Was, until I learned lonely isn't the worst thing. Being something you're not, that's worse." They cleaned up in comfortable silence. As Emma prepared for bed, she made a decision. "Sam, would you teach me to fight? Not just shoot, really fight." He looked up from banking the fire. "Why?" "Because I never want to feel helpless again. Never want someone else to have to bleed for my safety." "Fighting's ugly business. Emma, changes you." "So does being afraid all the time." She met his eyes steadily. "I'm already changed. Might as well be changed into something stronger. Sam studied her for a long moment, then nodded. We'll start tomorrow. But once you learn, you can't unlearn. You sure? Emma thought of Weatherby's blood on the ground, of Sam's knife at Crane's throat, of her own hand clutching the bone-handled blade in the cellar. The girl who'd left Kansas would have been horrified. But that girl was gone. I'm sure. That night, the wind howled fiercer than usual, rattling the windows and sending drafts through every small gap. Emma woke to find Sam adding wood to the fire, his silhouette outlined by flames. Storm coming, he said quietly. Big one. Might be snowed in for a while. Good. Emma surprised herself by saying, Let it snow. We've got wood and food and... She stopped, suddenly aware of what she was about to say. And each other, she finished softly. For however long it lasts. Sam turned from the fire, his expression unreadable in the shifting light. Yeah, he said after a moment. We've got that. Outside, the first fat snowflakes began to fall, covering their tracks, sealing them away from the world and its demands. Tomorrow would bring lessons in violence, preparation for battles yet to come. But tonight, with the fire crackling and the storm building, there was only the strange peace of two outcasts who'd found shelter in each other's company. The storm Sam had predicted turned into a 3-day blizzard that sealed them inside the cabin like a cocoon. The world beyond the walls disappeared into a white fury that rattled the windows and piled snow halfway up the door. Good thing we went to town when we did, Emma said on the second morning, watching Sam add another log to the fire. We'd be down to dried beans by now otherwise. Planning ahead keeps you alive out here. He settled back in his chair, picking up the trap he'd been repairing. Though I didn't figure on being stuck inside this long with company. Am I bothering you? The question came out more vulnerable than she'd intended. Sam looked up, seeming surprised. No, just not used to it. Been alone here 3 winters. Takes some adjusting. They developed a routine even in confinement. Morning exercises, Sam teaching her basic defensive moves in the small space. Keep your weight centered. Good. Now, if someone grabs you like this, his hand closed gently on her wrist, showing her how to break the hold. The contact was clinical, instructive, but Emma found herself increasingly aware of his proximity, the controlled strength in his movements. Afternoons were for quieter pursuits. Emma had found one of Sam's few books, a worn copy of Robinson Crusoe, and read aloud while he worked on his leather goods. Her voice filled the cabin, bringing life to the story of another person learning to survive in isolation. Thus I was absolute lord of my life and death, she read, then paused. Do you ever feel like that being out here alone? Used to. Sam's knife paused in its careful work. Then I figured out there's a difference between being lord of something and just being responsible for it. What changed? He was quiet so long she thought he'd chosen not to answer. Then, found a injured wolf pup, 3 winters back, right before I built this place, half dead, torn up by something bigger. Should have put it out of its misery. But you didn't. Fed it, nursed it back to health. Stupid thing to do, wolves aren't pets. But something about seeing it fight to live, he shrugged. Kept it through the winter. Come spring, it was strong enough to leave. And did it stay wild? Wild as ever, but it'd come around sometimes. Sit at the edge of the clearing, just watching, like it was checking I was still here. His hands resumed their work. Haven't seen it since last summer. Probably found a pack, moved on. That's the way of things. Emma watched him work, understanding what he wasn't saying directly. About connections that don't require ownership. About caring for something without trying to change its nature. That night, the storm reached its peak. The wind screamed like a living thing, and the cabin creaked under the assault. Emma lay rigid in bed, every gust making her heart race. Just wind, Sam said quietly from across the room. Cabin solid. Built it to last. I know. It's just a particularly violent gust shook the walls, and she couldn't suppress a whimper. She heard him get up, footsteps crossing the floor. He dragged his chair closer to the bed, settling into it with a blanket. Better. You don't have to. Go to sleep, Emma. I'll be here. She turned toward him in the darkness, making out his silhouette by the fire's glow. Tell me something about your mother's people. What do you want to know? Anything. What was it like, living with them? His voice took on a different quality, softer and more rhythmic. Summers were best, following the buffalo herds across the grasslands. Sky so big it felt like you could fall up into it. Everyone had their role hunters, scouts, women who could set up a whole village in an hour and break it down in half that time. Did you hunt? Learn to? My grandfather, my mother's father, took me on my first hunt when I was 12. Spent 3 days tracking a small herd. When the moment came, I was so excited I missed completely. Grandfather just smiled and said, "The buffalo spirits are testing if you deserve their gift. Be patient." Did you get one eventually? Next day, smaller than the others wanted, but I brought it down clean. Fed 5 families. She could hear the smile in his voice. Grandmother made me a blanket from the hide. Still have it somewhere. Why did you leave? The chair creaked as he shifted. Wasn't really my choice. After my mother died, there were some who thought I brought bad luck, white man's child, born outside proper ceremonies. When I wouldn't ride on raids, it confirmed what they suspected. My grandfather spoke for me. But when he passed, another shift. A man who doesn't fully belong anywhere learns to make his own place. Emma digested this, thinking of her own displacement. Do you miss it? The belonging? Sometimes. Mostly I miss the certainty, knowing exactly who you were, what was expected, where you fit. Out here, you have to decide all that for yourself. Is that why you helped me? Because you knew what it was like to not belong? Partly. His voice had gone thoughtful. Also because you reminded me of that wolf pup, torn up but still fighting. Seemed ashamed to let that spirit get snuffed out. They fell silent, listening to the storm, but it no longer seemed threatening with Sam keeping watch. Emma found herself drowsing, caught between sleep and wakefulness. Sam, she murmured. I'm glad you didn't let me give up. Never considered it an option. She smiled into her pillow. Lord of life and death. Just responsible for what I choose to protect. The third day brought calmer weather. Though snow still fell steadily, they ventured out to dig a path to the woodpile and check the animals. Emma helped, proud that she could now work in the cold without her hands going numb, that she could carry armloads of wood without stumbling. You're getting stronger, Sam observed, watching her stack wood inside. Good teacher. She brushed snow from her coat, her new coat, warm and practical. Though I still can't hit anything with the rifle. That'll come. You've got steady hands. Just need to trust your eye. That evening, with the storm finally breaking, they sat closer to the fire than usual, both reading, Emma continuing with Crusoe, while Sam studied an almanac he'd picked up in town. Listen to this, Emma said suddenly. I learned to look more upon the bright side of my condition, and less upon the dark side, and to consider what I enjoyed rather than what I wanted. Isn't that perfect? It's exactly what you've been teaching me. Sam glanced up. Defoe was a smart man. Understood that survival's as much about what's in here, he tapped his temple, as what's out there. Is that what I am now, a survivor? Getting there. Question is what you want to survive for. Emma set down the book, considering. Before, I just wanted to survive until I could have a normal life. Marriage, children, a home. But now I think maybe surviving is about more than just not dying. It's about choosing how to live, even when the choices are hard. Sam closed his almanac, giving her his full attention. That's a dangerous thought for a woman in this world. More dangerous than being at the mercy of men like Weatherby. Different kind of danger. Living on your own terms means most folks won't understand you. They'll judge, condemn, try to force you back into the shape they think you should be. Like they do with you. Like they do with me, he agreed. I've made my peace with it. Question is whether you can... Emma thought of the women in town, their whispers and stares, the careful distance they'd kept even while serving her in the store. The life she'd imagined respectable, safe, accepted seemed like a child's fairy tale now. I think, she said slowly, I'm more afraid of pretending to be something I'm not than of being condemned for what I am. Even if what you are is a woman living unmarried with a half-breed in the mountains. The blunt question hung between them. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she held his gaze. Even then, though that's not, we're not. I know. His expression softened slightly. But they don't. And they'll assume the worst because that's easier than understanding something different. Do you care what they think? No, but I've had years to build up that callus. You're still raw from caring. He was right, of course. Part of her still flinched from the judgment, still wanted to explain, to justify. But a larger part growing larger each day was beginning to see the freedom in letting those concerns go. Maybe that's what I need to survive for, she said finally. To become someone who can choose her path without apologizing for it. Sam smiled then, a real smile that transformed his usually serious features. Now that's a purpose worth having. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the snow continued to fall softly, but the violence had passed. Tomorrow would bring the work of digging out, of resuming the careful dance of two people learning to share space without losing themselves. But tonight, in the warm circle of firelight, Emma felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, she was too aware of all that remained uncertain for that, but a kind of acceptance, perhaps, of where she was, who she was with, and who she was becoming. Sam. Yeah. Thank you for staying up, during the worst of the storm. He glanced at the chair still positioned by her bed. Told you you don't owe me nothing. I know, but I'm grateful anyway. He nodded, accepting this distinction. They returned to their books, but the silence between them had shifted, become something warmer and more companionable. Outside, the Wyoming winter raged on. Inside, two souls who'd learned to survive alone were carefully, tentatively, learning what it meant to survive together. The letter arrived on a crystalline morning in early April, carried by a traveling merchant who traded sometimes with Sam. Emma was hanging laundry on the line strung between two pines, enjoying the first truly warm day since the blizzard. When she heard horses approaching, Sam emerged from the cabin, rifle in hand but held casually. He relaxed slightly when he recognized the trader, a grizzled man named Josiah, who dealt fairly with everyone, regardless of blood. Morning, Winters. Got mail for your guest. Josiah handed over an envelope, his eyes curious but not unkind as they found Emma. The return address made her hands tremble. Mrs. Catherine Morrison, Denver, Colorado, her mother's cousin, the one relative who'd maintained sporadic contact after her parents' deaths. Everything all right? Sam asked after Josiah had departed with a bundle of furs in trade for supplies. Emma stared at the unopened letter. It's from family, distant family, but I wrote to her months ago. Before I answered Weatherby's advertisement, I never heard back, assumed she wanted nothing to do with me. Only one way to find out what changed. Inside, Emma broke the seal with unsteady fingers while Sam busied himself making coffee, giving her the illusion of privacy while remaining close. The letter was brief but life-altering. Asterisk, dearest Emma. Asterisk. Forgive my delayed response. Your letter was misdirected and only recently reached me. I was horrified to learn of your circumstances following your parents' passing. Asterisk, I write with an offer that I hope will reach you in time. My husband recently passed, leaving me with a substantial household and a thriving dressmaking business in Denver. I find myself in desperate need of a companion and assistant, someone I can trust, who shares our family blood. Asterisk, if you are still in need of position and home, I would welcome you warmly. I can offer respectable employment, private quarters, and the chance to learn a skilled trade. Denver is quite civilized now, with opportunities for a young woman of character. Asterisk, I pray this letter finds you well and unspoiled by whatever circumstances drove you to answer advertisements from strange men. Please come at once if you are able. I've enclosed funds for travel. Asterisk, your loving cousin. Asterisk, Catherine, asterisk. A bank draft fluttered to the table, more money than Emma had seen since her parents died. Enough for stagecoach fare to Denver. New clothes, a fresh start in a real city with blood kin. Everything she'd thought she wanted 6 months ago. Good news, Sam asked carefully, setting a cup before her. Emma passed him the letter. He read it silently, his expression revealing nothing. When he finished, he folded it carefully and placed it back on the table between them. It's a good offer, he said finally. Safe, respectable, what you were looking for when you came here. Yes. The word came out barely above a whisper. Denver's growing fast. Plenty of opportunities there for a smart woman. And family. He turned his cup in his hands. Family's important. She's not really family. My mother's cousin. I met her once when I was 7. Still blood. That counts for something in this world. Emma watched him, noting the careful neutrality in his voice, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. 6 months of living together had taught her to read his silences. You think I should go? I think you should choose what's best for you. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. Spring's here. Roads are clear. If you're going, now's the time. And if I'm not going? He turned then, something flickering in his dark eyes before his expression smoothed. Then you're not, but you should think careful before refusing. This, he gestured at the cabin, isn't much of a life for a young woman. It's been enough so far. Through winter, when there was no choice, but summers are different. I'm gone days at a time hunting, trapping. Town gets busier with prospectors coming through. And Weatherby... What about Weatherby? He's been quiet, but men like him don't forget. You stay here permanent. That problem doesn't go away. Emma stood, anger sparking. So you do want me to leave? I want you to be safe, happy, to have a real future, not just... He stopped, jaw tight. Not just what, say it. Not just hiding in the woods with someone who can't give you anything proper. The words hung between them like a blade. Emma felt them cut deep, deeper than she'd expected. Proper, she repeated. Like what Weatherby offered, like being a poor relation in my cousin's house. Grateful for scraps of kindness. That's not... You taught me to survive on my own terms. To be strong, to fight, to choose my path without apology. And now you want me to run to Denver and be proper. Her voice cracked. Was it all just talk? Emma? No. She grabbed the letter, crumpling it. You don't get to decide what's best for me. You don't get to teach me to be independent and then push me away when I try to use that independence. She stormed out, leaving him standing by the window. The laundry still hung on the line, forgotten in the morning's disruption. Emma walked past it into the forest, following one of the trails Sam had shown her until she reached a small clearing where a stream bubbled over rocks. She sat on a fallen log, trying to make sense of the turmoil in her chest. The letter was still clutched in her hand, her passage to safety, respectability, the life she'd been raised to want. Denver, a real city with theaters and shops and churches. Her cousin's dressmaking business, where she could learn a trade that didn't involve skinning rabbits or splitting wood. A snapped twig made her look up. Sam stood at the clearing's edge, uncertain in a way she'd never seen him. I'm sorry, he said simply. You're right. I've got no business telling you what to choose. Emma smoothed out the letter. staring at her cousin's neat handwriting. "Why did you really want me to go?" He moved closer but didn't sit, standing with his back against a pine. "Honestly? Always. Because staying gets harder every day." Her heart stuttered. "Harder how?" "You know how." His voice was rough. 6 months. Emma, 6 months of you reading by the fire, singing while you work, bringing life to that cabin. 6 months of teaching you things, watching you get stronger, braver. 6 months of... He stopped, shaking his head. "Of what?" "Of wanting things I've got no right to want." The forest seemed to hold its breath. Emma stood slowly, moving closer to him. "What if I want them too?" "Then you're a fool." But his eyes betrayed him, dark with longing. "I've got nothing to offer. No name that matters. No position, no future beyond that cabin and what I can hunt or trade." "You have yourself." She was close enough now to see the pulse beating in his throat. "That's been enough so far. For surviving. Not for living. Not for..." His hand rose as if to touch her face, then dropped. "You deserve more than just enough." "Don't I get to decide what I deserve?" "Your cousin is offering me a gilded cage, a nicer one than Weatherby's, but still a cage. I'd be the poor relation, grateful and proper and careful not to overshadow her real daughters when they come of age." Emma took a breath, steadying herself. "I've tasted freedom. Sam, I can't go back to being small." "Freedom's got a price. Ask anyone who's tried to live outside the rules." "I know. I've been paying it all winter. The looks in town, the whispers, the assumptions." She met his eyes. "It's been worth it?" "Has it? What have you gained besides calloused hands and a reputation?" "Myself." The word came out fierce, certain. "I've gained myself. The woman who can shoot badly, but still. Who can dress a deer and bank a fire and walk through a blizzard without whimpering. Who reads to you at night and isn't afraid of your silences or your scars." Sam's control finally cracked. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "That woman," he said roughly, "is going to be the death of me." "I hope not. I've grown fond of you breathing." A sound escaped him. Half laugh, half groan. "Emma, you have to understand. If you really stay, not just until something better comes along, things change." "I change. I can't be casual about this." "Who said anything about casual? He searched her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Whatever he found made him lean down until their foreheads touched. "Last chance," he whispered. "Denver, safety, a normal life." Emma's hands came up to frame his face, feeling the roughness of stubble, the warmth of skin. This man who'd saved her, taught her, never asked for anything but gave everything. "I choose this," she said firmly. "I choose you, if you'll have me." He kissed her then, 6 months of restraint breaking like a dam. It was nothing like the fumbling attempts of farm boys back in Kansas. This was fire and certainty, and a claiming that went both ways. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sam's eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. "The cousin," he managed. "What do we tell her?" Emma looked at the letter still crumpled in her hand. Then, deliberately, she tore it in half, then quarters, then eighths, letting the pieces flutter to the ground like snow. "We tell her thank you, but I've found my position already." She smiled up at him. "Assistant to a leather worker and trapper. Room and board included. Excellent benefits." "That all?" "Well," she pretended to consider. "My employer's handsome enough, if you like the brooding type. Terrible conversationalist, though, and his cooking could use work." He laughed, pulling her close again. "Good thing his assistant's improving in the kitchen." They stood there in the spring sunshine, holding each other while the stream gurgled and birds called overhead. There would be consequences, there always were, for choosing the harder path. But Emma had learned that the easiest choice wasn't always the right one. "We should get back," Sam said eventually. That laundry won't hang itself. Always so practical. Someone has to be. But he was smiling as he said it. Besides, we've got a letter to write. Can't leave your cousin wondering. They walked back hand in hand, the torn letter left behind for the wind to scatter. Emma would write to Catherine, thanking her but declining. She'd craft the words carefully, hinting at contentment without revealing too much. Let her cousin think what she would. At the cabin, Sam paused before going inside. You're sure no regrets come morning? Emma squeezed his hand. The only thing I'd regret is getting on that stage to Denver. He nodded, accepting this truth. They went inside together, to their small space that had become home when neither was looking. The afternoon stretched before them, full of ordinary tasks made extraordinary by the shift in their connection. Emma rehung the laundry while Sam repaired harnesses. But now there were shared glances, brief touches, the awareness of a decision made and a future uncertain, but theirs stretching ahead. The confrontation came on a sweltering July afternoon, when the heat made the air shimmer and even the birds sought shade. Emma was in the garden, weeding between rows of beans and squash, her first successful attempt at growing food rather than just gathering it when she heard the horses. Multiple horses moving fast. She straightened, hand going automatically to the knife at her belt. Sam had insisted she always carry it when he was away. He'd left at dawn to check his trap lines in the high country, wouldn't be back until evening. 5 riders emerged from the tree line. Weatherby led them, flanked by Crane and 3 men she didn't recognize, hard-looking men with guns worn low and easy. Her blood turned cold despite the heat. Well. Weatherby dismounted, his smile sharp as broken glass. Mrs. Winters, I presume? Or hasn't the breed made an honest woman of you yet? Emma forced herself to stand straight, not backing toward the cabin despite every instinct screaming retreat. Mr. Weatherby, you're trespassing on private property. Am I funny thing about property rights out here? They're only as strong as your ability to defend them. He moved closer, his men spreading out in a loose semicircle. Been hearing interesting things in town, how you and that savage have been living in sin all winter, playing house like decent folk. What Sam and I do is none of your concern. See, that's where you're wrong. His voice hardened. You made it my concern when you broke our agreement, when you humiliated me in front of the whole town, when you chose a half-breed's blanket over my silk sheets. Crane laughed, an ugly sound. Maybe she likes it rough. These farm girls, they pretend to be proper, but get them alone. That's enough. Emma's voice came out steady despite her racing heart. State your business and leave. My business. Weatherby pulled a folded paper from his vest. My business is collecting what's owed. See, I've been going through my correspondence. Found your letters agreeing to my terms. Found the receipts for your travel expenses. Even found a witness, the hotel clerk who'll swear you agreed to the full arrangement that night. That's a lie. Is it your word against mine? And who do you think the territorial judge will believe, established businessman or a girl living with a known troublemaker? He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his pomade and sweat. But I'm willing to be generous. Come with me now. Honor our original agreement, and I'll forget this whole unfortunate episode. I'd rather die. That can be arranged too. Crane's hand drifted toward his gun. Accidents happen in these mountains. Wild animals, claim jumpers. Why, just last month a whole family got burned out of their cabin over near Crystal Creek. Terrible tragedy. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Emma's mind raced, calculating distances, options. The cabin was 20 feet away, but they'd catch her before she reached it. The forest offered cover, but they had horses, and even if she could escape, they'd just come back. Maybe burn the cabin while Sam was gone, destroy everything they'd built. Gentlemen. A new voice, calm and cold as mountain water. Everyone turned. Sam stood at the forest edge, rifle held loosely but ready. He must have heard the horses circled back through the trees, Relief flooded through Emma so strongly her knees nearly buckled. Winters. Weatherby's confidence faltered slightly. We were just having a conversation with Miss Hartley about unfulfilled obligations. Mrs. Winters, Sam corrected softly. And any obligations she had to you were paid in full. We've been through this. You can't just, Weatherby started. The rifle shifted, not quite pointing at anyone but making its presence known. I did. Now you're going to get on those horses and ride away. Don't come back. 5 against 1, breed. Crane sneered. You might get one of us, but 2. Emma had drawn her knife, the blade catching sunlight. He'd get at least 2. Sam smiled without looking at her. My wife's being modest. She's gotten good with that blade. Probably take 3 before you brought her down. This is ridiculous, one of the other men muttered. Weatherby, you didn't say nothing about fighting no she-bear and her Indian. I didn't sign on for 'em. Shut up, Weatherby snapped. But Emma could see the doubt spreading among his hired men. Intimidating one woman was different from facing armed resistance. Tell you what, Sam said conversationally. I'll make this simple. You leave now, stay away from my wife and my land, and we all go on living. Or, he finally raised the rifle, sighting down the barrel with deadly steadiness. We find out how many of you I can drop before you get to cover. Your choice. The tableau held for a long moment, Emma with her knife, Sam with his rifle. 5 men calculating odds in the afternoon heat. A hawk circled overhead, its cry piercing the silence. Finally, Weatherby stepped back. This isn't over. Yes, Sam said firmly. It is, because if I see you or any of your men near here again, I won't waste time talking. Emma, you still got that letter from your cousin, the one from Denver? She nodded, understanding immediately. The one where she mentions her husband's connections, his friends in the territorial government. It was a bluff. Catherine's husband was dead. Had no connections they knew of, but Weatherby didn't know that. That's the one, Sam continued. Might be time to write back. Tell her about the businessman who tried to force her cousin into unseemly arrangements. Names, dates, witnesses. The kind of story newspapers love. Weatherby's face went purple. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Sam's voice had gone flat. Dangerous. I've got nothing to lose but this cabin. You've got a reputation, businesses, standing in the community. Which of us you think will blink first? Mr. Weatherby, one of his men said nervously. Maybe we should... Fine. The word came out like it physically hurt him. But don't think this makes you respectable. You're still just a savage and his... The rifle barked, sending up a spray of dirt inches from Weatherby's feet. The horses danced nervously. Next one's higher, Sam said calmly. Emma, go inside. Sam, please. She went, but stood just inside the doorway where she could see and hear everything. The men mounted quickly, Weatherby's face a mask of fury and humiliation. You've made an enemy today. Winters. Already had one. Now I've got one who knows to keep his distance. Sam kept the rifle trained on them as they wheeled their horses. Don't come back. They rode away in a cloud of dust and wounded pride. Sam stood motionless until the hoofbeats faded, then slowly lowered the rifle. Only then did Emma see the slight tremor in his hands. She ran to him, knife forgotten. Throwing her arms around him, he dropped the rifle and held her tight, his heart hammering against her chest. You called me your wife, she said against his shirt. Seemed like the right time. His voice was rough. If you don't mind. Mind? She pulled back to look at him. Sam Winters, are you proposing? Not much of a proposal. No ring, no getting on one knee. He cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. But if you'll have me, I'd be proud to call you wife in truth. We could ride to the mission at Fort Bridger, make it legal, or find a circuit preacher if you prefer. You'd do that, marry me properly. Emma, I'd marry you in every church between here and California if it made you happy. Comanche ceremony, too, if I could find someone to perform it." His eyes searched hers. "Question is what you want." She thought of her parents' wedding photograph, her mother's white dress and careful smile, the church full of neighbors, the reception in the Grange Hall, all the proper elements of a proper marriage. Then she looked around at their cabin, their garden, the life they'd built through winter storms and spring hopes. This man who'd saved her, taught her, loved her without ever demanding she be anything but herself. "I want whatever makes us married in the eyes of God and law," she said. "Don't much care about the rest." He kissed her then, long and deep, tasting of relief and promise. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Fort Bridger's a week's ride," he said. "We could leave tomorrow. Take our time, camp under the stars." "A wedding trip?" Emma laughed. "How romantic. Will there be skinning rabbits and checking trap lines?" "Woman, I'm trying to court you proper here. Bit late for that, don't you think?" He growled and kissed her again, backing her against the cabin wall. This time when they parted, both were breathing hard. "Inside," he said roughly, "before I forget, we've got garden vegetables that need harvesting." "Always so practical," she teased, but her pulse was racing. "Someone has to be. My wife's got her head in the clouds, thinking about wedding trips and such." "Not your wife yet," she reminded him. "Close enough for now." He retrieved his rifle, checking it over with professional care. "Though we should probably put those vegetables up before we leave. And I'll need to ask Josiah to check the livestock while we're gone. And—" Emma stopped his planning with another kiss. "We've got time. Weatherby won't be back today." "You sure about that?" She thought of the fear she'd seen in the hired men's eyes, the way Weatherby's bluster had crumbled when faced with real resistance. "I'm sure we called his bluff, and he knows it." They spent the afternoon working side by side in the garden, the threat of violence fading like morning mist. Emma found herself stealing glances at Sam, this man who would soon be her husband-in-law as he already was in heart. That evening, as they sat by the fire planning their trip to Fort Bridger, Emma felt the last chains of her old life fall away. The scared girl who'd stepped off the stage in Silverbrook was gone. In her place sat a woman who could face down threats with a knife, who knew the value of both tenderness and strength. "No regrets?" Sam asked, catching her thoughtful mood. "Only one." His eyebrows rose. "What's that?" "I wish my mother could have met you. She would have liked you, once she got past the scandal of it all." A mother's prerogative to be scandalized by her daughter's choices. He took her hand, tracing the calluses that marked her transformation. "Think she would have come around?" Emma smiled, remembering her mother's hidden steel, the way she'd insisted on education, even when times were hard. Eventually, she valued character over convention, when it came down to it, and you, Sam Winters, have more character than any dozen proper gentlemen. "Sweet talker, that's how you caught me. You know, reading those books in that voice of yours." "I thought it was my rabbit skinning skills." "Those too." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing each work-roughened fingertip. "Everything about you, truth be told." They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, night sounds drifting through the windows. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the journey to Fort Bridger, making their union legal, returning to face whatever gossip arose. But tonight, they were simply Sam and Emma, two people who'd found each other across all the differences that should have kept them apart, who'd built something stronger than convenience or propriety or fear, something worth fighting for. Fort Bridger sprawled across the valley like a small city, all wooden buildings and canvas tents, alive with the constant motion of travelers heading west. Emma had never seen so many people in one place since leaving Kansas soldiers. Traders, emigrant families, Indians from various tribes come to trade. They'd taken their time getting here. 5 days instead of rushing. Sam had shown her hidden valleys, Clear streams where trout practically jumped into their hands. Meadows where deer grazed unafraid. At night they'd camped under stars so bright they seemed touchable, and Emma had learned new dimensions of the man she was about to marry. "Nervous?" Sam asked as they rode through the fort's gates. "Should I be?" "Some women might be. Getting married in a military post ain't exactly the church wedding most dream about." Emma looked around at the rough buildings, the mix of humanity going about their business. "I stopped dreaming about church weddings the night you threw your coat around my shoulders. This is better, it's real." They found the chaplain in a small office attached to the fort's chapel, a weathered building that served all denominations as needed. Captain Morris was a thin man with kind eyes who'd clearly performed many such ceremonies for couples passing through. "You'll need witnesses," he said after checking their names in his register. "And there's a small fee." Sam placed coins on the desk. "Witnesses won't be a problem." Indeed, when word spread that Sam Winters was getting married, a small crowd gathered. Josiah the trader was there, grinning broadly. Several mountain men Sam had dealt with fair and square over the years. Even a Shoshone family he'd helped through a hard winter. But it was the arrival of an unexpected witness that made Emma's breath catch. "Sam Winters getting married," a musical voice said from the doorway. "Never thought I'd see the day." The woman who entered was stunning tall and graceful, with copper skin and elaborate silver jewelry. Her dress was a mixture of native and Mexican styles, and she moved with the confidence of someone used to being watched. "Maria," Sam said carefully, "didn't know you were at the fort. Just arrived yesterday with a trading party from Santa Fe." Her dark eyes found Emma, assessed her with an intensity that made Emma straighten her spine. "So you're the woman who finally caught him." "Maria's an old friend," Sam explained, though something in his tone suggested more than friendship. "Maria, this is Emma. Soon to be Emma Winters." Emma stepped forward, extending her hand in the way her mother had taught her, polite but firm. "How nice to meet Sam's friends." Maria laughed, a rich sound like water over stones. "Oh, I like her. She's got steel under that prairie flower exterior." She took Emma's hand, her grip strong. "Yes, Sam, I'll stand witness. Someone should make sure you don't bolt at the last second." The ceremony was simple. Captain Morris read from the fort's well-worn Bible, while Emma and Sam stood before the small altar. She wore her best dress, the blue wool Sam had bought her, pressed as well as travel allowed. He'd put on his cleanest shirt and even attempted to tame his hair, though the wind had other ideas. "Do you, Samuel Winters, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice carried the same certainty it had when facing down Weatherby. "Do you, Emma Hartley, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." The words came out clear and strong. "Then, by the authority vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you man and wife." Sam's kiss was brief but thorough, mindful of their audience but leaving no doubt about his feelings. The witnesses cheered a mix of languages and accents that somehow perfectly captured the frontier's diversity. Afterward, Josiah produced a jug of whiskey for toasting the happy couple, and the celebration moved outside. Emma found herself swept into conversations, receiving advice from traders' wives, congratulations from the mountain men, even a beautiful beaded hair ornament from the Shoshone woman. But she noticed Sam and Maria speaking quietly near the horses, their body language suggesting old familiarity and perhaps unfinished business. "Don't let it trouble you," a voice said beside her. Emma turned to find Captain Morris's wife, a practical woman who'd witnessed many fort weddings. "That one Maria she blazes through here every few years leaves broken hearts and empty pockets in her wake. But your husband never fell for it. One of the few." "They seem close." "They traveled in the same circles for a time, but Sam Winters always walked alone. Until now." She patted Emma's arm. "What you've got is rarer than gold out here, a man who chooses you and means it." When Sam returned to her side, Maria was already mounting her horse, preparing to rejoin her party. "Congratulations, Emma Winters," she called. "Take care of him. He's one of the good ones, even if he is too stubborn to know it." She rode off with a wave, silver jewelry flashing in the sun. Sam's hand found Emma's, squeezing gently. "Old friend?" Emma asked, keeping her tone light. "Old something," he admitted. "Might have been more once, but she wanted me to be something I wasn't, to use my mother's blood to help her trading schemes, play the exotic savage for her buyers. When I wouldn't," he shrugged. "She moved on to someone who would. Do you regret it?" He turned to face her fully, hands settling on her waist. "The only thing I regret is that I can't give you more. A proper house instead of a cabin. A name that carries weight. The kind of life you deserve." "Sam Winters." Emma placed her hands flat on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "I just married you in front of God and witnesses. I have exactly the life I deserve, the one I chose. The one I'll keep choosing every day. So stop trying to make decisions for me about what I need." "Yes, ma'am." His smile turned wicked. "Seeing as you're my wife now and all. And don't you forget it." They spent one night in the fort's guest quarters, a small luxury Sam insisted on. "Just this once," he said. "A real bed and walls that don't let in the wind." Emma woke before dawn to find him already awake, watching her in the dim light. "Second thoughts?" she asked. "Never. Just thinking how different you look from that scared girl at the hotel." "I'm still scared sometimes." "Different kind of scared. Then you were afraid of what would happen to you. Now you're afraid for things for us, for what we're building. That's the kind of fear that makes you strong." They left Fort Bridger as the sun climbed, packs loaded with supplies and wedding gifts from well-wishers. The journey home was quieter than the trip out, both of them adjusting to the subtle shift in their relationship. Not just lovers or companions now, but married, legal, recognized. "What do you think town will say?" Emma asked as they neared familiar territory. "Same things they've been saying, probably, just with more creativity." "Will it bother you having a wife who's the subject of gossip?" Sam reined in his horse, turning to look at her. "Emma, I've been the subject of gossip since the day I was born. Half-breed, savage, hermit, I've heard it all. What bothers me is thinking it might hurt you." Mrs. Patterson was polite to me, even smiled when you bought the wedding clothes." Money talks louder than prejudice sometimes, but not always. They reached the cabin as afternoon shadows grew long. Everything was as they'd left it. Josiah's nephew had done a good job tending the livestock, but somehow it looked different to Emma now. Not just a shelter or hiding place, but truly home. That night, as they lay entwined in the bed they now officially shared, Emma traced the scar along Sam's jaw. "Tell me about this one." "Bar fight in Cheyenne. Man didn't appreciate a breed drinking in his establishment." "And this?" Her finger found another mark on his shoulder. "Grizzly. I was young and stupid. Thought I could take her cubs. She taught me different." "Any scars you got protecting someone else?" He caught her hand, kissing the palm. "Why?" "Because I want to know all of you. The fighter, the protector, the man who stands alone. All the pieces that make you who you are." "That could take a while." "Good thing we're married. Then I've got time." He rolled her beneath him, eyes serious in the firelight. "So do I. Time to learn every smile, every frown, every dream you've got hidden away. Time to build something worth having." "We've already started." "No," he corrected softly. "We've just laid the foundation. Now comes the real work." Emma thought of the challenges ahead, Weatherby's lingering threat, the town's judgment, the simple, hard reality of frontier life. Sam was right. Getting married was just the beginning. But looking up at this man who'd chosen her as surely as she'd chosen him, who'd given her strength and purpose and a name to call her own, she couldn't find it in herself to be afraid. "Then we'd better get some sleep," she said practically. "Real work requires rest." Sam laughed, the sound filling their small cabin with warmth. "Always thinking ahead? How'd I get so lucky? Just naturally charming, I suppose. Must be it. He settled beside her, pulling her close. Mrs. Winters. Yes, Mr. Winters. Welcome home. Emma smiled into the darkness. Home. Such a simple word for something so hard-won. But then, the best things usually were. Outside, nightbirds called and wind stirred the pines. Inside, two people who'd found each other against all odds settled into sleep, ready to face whatever tomorrow brought. Together. The first snow of their second winter together came early, dusting the mountains like sugar while the aspens still held their gold. Emma stood in the doorway of their cabin, both hands pressed to her lower back, watching Sam split wood with the same steady rhythm she'd come to love. A year and a half of marriage had brought changes. The cabin now boasted a second room, Sam's wedding gift to her, built with the help of neighbors who'd slowly come to accept them. Mrs. Patterson even sent her daughter Mary to learn letters from Emma twice a week, payment in eggs and preserved goods. You'll catch cold, Sam called without breaking rhythm. I'm fine. Someone needs to supervise. Make sure you're doing it right. He embedded the axe in the stump and turned, eyebrows raised. 18 months of marriage and now she's an expert on wood splitting. Expert on you, Emma corrected, then winced as her back twinged again. Sam was beside her in 3 strides. How long? Since dawn. It's nothing, just... Another wave of discomfort cut off her words. Just our child deciding to arrive 3 weeks early. His hands were gentle on her shoulders. I'll ride for Mrs. Coleman. Don't you dare leave me, Sam Winters. Emma. Babies have been born without midwives for thousands of years. We've delivered calves and foals. How different can it be? The look he gave her suggested it was very different indeed, but another contraction made the decision for them. Sam half carried her inside, settling her on the bed they'd shared since their wedding night. I should have insisted you stay in town these last weeks, he muttered, building up the fire and setting water to heat. And missed the first snow besides. You know what they still say about us, about our child. That silenced him. The gossip had been vicious when Emma's pregnancy became apparent, whispers about the timing, about whether the baby was truly Sam's or if Emma had already been carrying when she fled Weatherby. They'd weathered it as they weathered everything together, heads high, letting their actions speak louder than words. The labor was long and hard. Sam never left her side, letting her crush his hands through the worst of it, wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragements in English and Comanche both. When Emma thought she couldn't endure another moment, when the pain threatened to tear her apart, he anchored her. You're the strongest woman I know, he said fiercely. You faced down Weatherby. You learned to shoot. You chose this life when everyone said you were mad. You can do this. I'm scared, she gasped between contractions. So am I, but we're scared together. That's what matters. As the sun set, painting the snow-touched mountains crimson, their daughter entered the world with a cry that seemed to shake the cabin walls. Sam caught her with hands that trembled, his face a study in wonder. She's perfect, he breathed, placing the baby on Emma's chest. Lord help us, she's perfect. The baby was small but fierce, with her father's dark hair and her mother's stubborn chin. They wrapped her in the softest blanket they owned, one Sam's grandmother had made, that he'd kept all these years. What do we call her? Emma asked, exhausted but unable to stop staring at their miracle. Sarah, Sam said without hesitation. It means princess in Hebrew, your mother's middle name, wasn't it? How did you? Emma's eyes filled. I mentioned it once, months ago. I remember everything you tell me. He stretched out beside them, one arm encompassing his whole world. Sarah Winters, first of her name, probably going to be twice as stubborn as both parents combined. Probably. Emma agreed, then laughed as Sarah's tiny fist waved in apparent agreement. They spent that night in a bubble of quiet joy, taking turns holding Sarah, marveling at tiny fingers and toes. When she cried, Emma nursed her while Sam sang soft Comanche lullabies his mother had sung to him. Dawn brought reality in the form of hoofbeats. Sam was instantly alert, rifle in hand, but relaxed when Josiah's voice called out, "Heard you might need Mrs. Coleman brought her along just in case." The midwife bustled in, all efficiency and experience. She examined both Emma and Sarah with practiced hands, pronouncing them healthy as horses and twice as pretty. "You did well," she told Sam. Most men would have panicked. "Most men don't have Emma for a wife," he replied simply. Word spread as word always did in the mountains. By the end of the week, they'd had more visitors than in the previous 6 months combined. Some came out of genuine kindness, Mrs. Patterson with a basket of baby clothes, the Shoshone family with a beautiful cradleboard. Others came from curiosity, wanting to see the child of the mixed-blood hermit and his scandalous bride. It was during one such visit that everything changed. Emma was showing Sarah to the minister's wife, a woman who'd been cautiously friendly. When riders appeared, her blood went cold. Weatherby stepped down from his horse. But something was different. He looked older, grayer, diminished somehow. Sam appeared from the barn, rifle ready, but Weatherby raised empty hands. "I'm not here for trouble," he said, words that seemed to pain him. "I'm here to make amends." "Bit late for that," Sam said flatly. "Maybe." Weatherby's eyes found Emma, then the baby in her arms. "I heard about the child. It made me remember something I'd forgotten, that people aren't property, that what I tried to do was wrong." Emma studied him, this man who'd terrorized her dreams for months. He looked smaller now, just an aging businessman facing his own mortality. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "To apologize, and to give you this." He pulled out a leather folder. "It's a deed, to the land adjoining yours to the east. 60 acres of good timber and a year-round spring. Consider it a wedding gift, belated." Sam took the deed, examining it carefully. "Why?" "Because I'm dying." Weatherby's laugh was bitter. "Doctor says I've got maybe 6 months. Makes a man think about his legacy, about the harm he's done." He looked at Emma again. "I was wrong. About everything. You're worth 10 of any society lady, and Winters, you're a better man than I ever was." He turned to go, then paused. "That child's lucky. Growing up with parents who know what real strength is. Don't let the world tell her different." He rode away without waiting for response, leaving them stunned on their own doorstep. "Do you believe him?" Emma asked. "Doesn't matter if I do. The deed's real. That land will set us up for years." Sam's arm came around her, encompassing her and Sarah both. "But more than that, maybe it means the fighting's done. Maybe we can just live now." That night, Sarah fussy with colic. They took turns walking her around the cabin during Emma's shift. She found herself at the window, looking out at the snow-covered clearing where she'd once arrived, terrified and desperate. "You'll never know that fear," she whispered to her daughter. "You'll grow up strong and free and loved. You'll know your worth isn't determined by others, but by your own choices." Sam joined them, wrapping his arms around both. "What are you thinking?" "About beginnings. How I came here with nothing but fear and a borrowed coat." "My coat," he corrected, "never was borrowed, was given freely. Like everything else you've given me. Emma," he turned her to face him, careful of the baby between them. "You still don't understand. You gave me more than I gave you. You gave me purpose, a reason to be more than just a man hiding in the woods. We saved each other, then. Maybe that's how the best love works." Sarah chose that moment to stop crying, looking up at them with dark eyes that seemed impossibly wise. Emma laughed softly. "I think she agrees." They stood there in their cabin, larger now, but still simple. Still theirs, watching snow fall in the moonlight. Tomorrow would bring the usual challenges of frontier life. Sarah would need raising. The new land would need managing. Town would always have those who judged them. But tonight, they were simply a family, formed not by society's rules, but by choice, by struggle, by the kind of love that builds slowly and lasts forever. "No regrets?" Sam asked, echoing his old question. Emma looked at her daughter, at her husband, at the life they'd built against all odds. "Not one," she said firmly. "Except maybe that I can't see the look on Weatherby's face when town hears he gave us that land." Sam's laugh rumbled through his chest. "Bloodthirsty woman. What am I teaching our daughter?" To stand tall, to choose her own path, to know that the blanket freely given is worth more than all the silk in the world. Speaking of blankets, Sam adjusted the one around Sarah, his grandmother's handiwork protecting a new generation. She's finally asleep. They put their daughter in the cradle Sam had carved, then stood watching her breathe. Such a small thing to hold such large dreams. But then, Emma reflected, she'd been small once too, and look what she'd become. "Thank you," she said suddenly. "For what?" "For seeing me in that hotel, for offering your coat, for never asking me to be less than I am." "Thank you," he countered, "for taking it, for staying, for making me more than I thought I could be." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing their corner of the world in pristine white. Inside, the fire crackled warmly, and Sarah sighed in her sleep the sound of perfect contentment. Emma smiled, leaning into Sam's warmth. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges and victories, but tonight, she was exactly where she belonged. Home, family, love. Everything a scared girl from Kansas had never dared dream of, and so much more. "You still don't owe me nothing," Sam murmured into her hair. "No," Emma agreed. "But I choose to give you everything anyway." And in the end, that choice freely made, freely given, freely received was worth more than all the gold in the Colorado mountains. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope it touched your heart as much as it touched mine while sharing it with you. Please comment below and let me know where in the world you're listening from. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts about Emma and Sam's journey. If you enjoyed this tale of courage, choice, and unexpected love, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850 for more authentic frontier stories. Don't forget to like this video and hit the hype button to help this story reach more listeners who appreciate tales of the old American West. Until next time, partners.